Daniel Grayson was a man consumed by anger. A successful architect in New York City, his life was built on a foundation of arrogance, frustration, and a perpetual dissatisfaction that repelled anyone who dared to get close. He had no real friends, no love for his family, and no patience for those he deemed beneath him. One fateful day, at a high-rise construction site where he oversaw the project, he encountered an old man named Walter Finch. Walter had been hired as a site inspector, a job he took seriously. However, Walter's demeanor mirrored Daniel's, rude, blunt, and utterly devoid of charm. When Walter pointed out severe structural flaws in the design, Daniel's temper exploded. Their argument escalated into a violent shouting match that ended with Daniel firing Walter on the spot and having security escort him out. But even that wasn't enough. Daniel seethed with unresolved rage, craving revenge. The next afternoon, as workers left for lunch, Daniel saw his opportunity. He called Walter, pretending to apologize and offering him his job back. "Let's talk in person," he suggested. Walter, suspicious but needing the work, reluctantly agreed. He arrived at the site and took the labor lift to the 30th floor, where Daniel was waiting. Walter barely had time to react before Daniel snatched his phone, deleted their call history, and wiped his fingerprints off with a handkerchief. He then stuffed the phone back into Walter's pocket, and without a second thought, shoved him off the edge. Walter's scream was brief, cut off by the sickening crunch of his body hitting the unfinished concrete below. Workers returning from lunch found the mangled corpse. Daniel had already slipped out through the emergency exit. The building had no surveillance, no proof, no witnesses. It was the perfect crime. A month passed. The project stalled, but eventually Daniel was called back to continue his work. The moment he stepped onto the site, an unease settled over him. The air felt thick, the shadows darker than before. The first sign came that evening when he worked late. He heard faint tapping from the lift shaft. Curious, he walked over and peered inside. The lift was stationary at the ground level, but the tapping continued, growing louder, turning into pounding. The metal groaned. Then a voice, low, guttural, and unmistakably Walter's, whispered, "You shouldn't have done that, Daniel." Daniel stumbled back, heart racing. He convinced himself it was exhaustion, nothing more. But the occurrences intensified. The next morning, Daniel entered the site's makeshift restroom. As he washed his face, he glanced up and saw Walter's face staring back from the mirror, his dead eyes locked onto his. A cold, skeletal hand reached from the glass. Daniel spun around. No one was there. The mirror shattered violently on its own. Days later, Daniel took the labor lift alone. As it ascended, the control panel flickered. The buttons pressed themselves, sending him higher and higher, past the intended floor. The emergency brake failed. The lift stopped suddenly, jerking so violently that Daniel collapsed to his knees. The doors creaked open, onto empty space, a direct drop to the concrete below. A voice echoed, "Jump, Daniel, it's only fair." The lift suddenly plunged but stopped inches from the ground, the force nearly snapping Daniel's spine. He staggered out, breathless, shaking. One evening he found himself drawn to the rooftop, unable to resist the pull. The wind howled unnaturally as he stepped to the edge. A voice whispered in his ear, "Look down, Daniel." He did. Walter stood at the bottom, staring up with empty, blackened sockets. Then, Walter was behind him, pressing cold fingers into his shoulders. Daniel screamed and ran, but no matter where he turned, Walter appeared, his twisted, broken body lurking in doorways, reflections, shadows. Sleep-deprived and unraveling, Daniel stopped going home. He became a ghost himself, wandering the halls of the unfinished high-rise, mumbling to himself. The workers noticed his sunken eyes, his erratic behavior. Some whispered that he was cursed, that he had gone mad. One fateful evening, Daniel stood at the edge of the building, the same spot where he had pushed Walter to his death. A freezing hand gripped his wrist. He turned. Walter was there, face inches from his lips curling into a grotesque grin. "It's your turn now, Daniel." With a final terrifying scream, Daniel lost his balance. Or was he pushed? He plummeted, his body crumpling against the same concrete Walter had met his fate on. His mouth was frozen in a silent scream, his eyes wide with the terror of what he had seen in his final moment. The workers found him the next morning. Some swore they heard laughter in the wind. Others refused to enter the site again. The project was abandoned, and the unfinished high-rise became known as the Cursed Tower, where the spirits of two angry men roamed, forever locked in their hatred. No one ever built on that land again.